How good was the 49ers football team against the Seattle Seahawks on Thursday? And which areas do they still need to improve? We're going to talk about it in this episode of 49ers Cutback.
From the alley-oops at Keysar to the glory days at the stick. From who's got it better than us to brick by brick. It's always the 49ers way. From off-season to game day. Yeah, we talk back. It's the 49ers Cutback.
It's 49ers Cutback podcast time. Welcome to the show, everyone. It's time to go upon further review. Watch the film, watched it back, make sure I know exactly what I saw. But also, when you look at the All 22, you find some different perspectives than maybe you were first thinking. And so, your approach and kind of your thought process on what happened during a football game kind of goes through stages. Right after the game, you have a certain feeling about it, and it's a lot of times it's very emotional. Then all of a sudden, as things start to relax, your view changes a little bit. You hear a lot of that on my live reaction show. Then as the week progresses and you get more into the film, that's when you have a clear picture. And sometimes it says exactly what you saw when you first watched, and sometimes it says something entirely different. But I want to talk extensively today about what the 49ers did really well in this game versus Seahawks and how they can build off of that. Because the conversation last week was, how do you right the ship? And one of the ways you right the ship is by doing things that you do really well. I want to talk about if the 49ers did that. But I also want to highlight maybe some things that they're still looking to improve. They've got to get better at. They've got to find a way to constantly improve. And beating the Seahawks was a big step in the right direction. But you've got the Chiefs and Cowboys coming up next. So there's going to be a huge focus on the Chiefs this week. But I wanted to kind of put a bow on the game versus Seattle because I think it did get the 49ers back on track as far as winning in the division and ultimately getting where they want to be, which is a playoff opportunity, where that's all you're looking for is a ticket to the dance. But there's been lots of things out there. I was able to see that some people are very much still all over Brian Schneider. Is that something that should be happening? I'm going to talk about that. And also something with Nick Sorensen. People are still not happy with this 49ers defense. If you follow me on Twitter, you know I don't understand that at all, and we'll see if it was backed up on film. But please like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. I really appreciate it. If you're listening on audio platform, 49ers Cutback on Believe, please give it a 5-star rating. And if you're going to bet with Bet Online. Bet Online is the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for everything sports betting. Every stat, matchup, breakdown, and even live odds and spreads you bet on during games. With the largest catalog of odds on everything from football to Major League Baseball playoffs, NHL, NBA to political props. When the game's over, head on over to our online casino and get in on a game of blackjack or poker or unwind with one of our over 150 slot games. Head to the website today to get in on the action with America's most trusted site for online wagering. Bet online, the game starts here. So, upon further review means we're going to just break it down from the coaching points of what I saw on film. And I wanted to start with the 49ers rookies because I thought the 49ers rookies played such a good game. They were just executing at a pretty high level, and you needed that production from them. There were players out. Charvarius Ward not playing. Talanoa Hufanga on the IR. You're going to need to count on Renardo Green and Malik Mustafa. And both of them answered the bell. They played tough. They played physical. They played fast. And it wasn't perfect, but you can't really expect it to be perfect in a game, let alone from rookies who are still learning to play. But I thought what it could do is signal that you're moving in the right direction and that there's really room for optimism for the growth potential of what those two guys could do within your system. They were going against a very talented Seattle Seahawks offense. Anytime you go with those three top wide receivers, DK Metcalf, you're talking Jackson Smith and Jigba. I mean, they got some guys that can make some plays for this football team. And of course, they have the crafty veteran as well. So it's not like they weren't very talented. They were. and they played very talented in this football game, and the 49ers had to figure out how to handle them. And they did a pretty good job overall of making sure those guys didn't have really good games. Now, when you look at the guys like Tyler Lockett, he still had an impact in this game, including one vertical play down the field on Isaac Gedem, but 4 catches for 65 yards in a game where Geno Smith threw 50 times. If you're throwing 50 times, it means you're either playing from behind or you're ineffective in the run game, which they were. But Tyler Lockett having 4 for 65, really the one blemish, that 37-yard catch. Other than that, they kept him under control. And Jackson Smith-Njigba, 5 catches, 53. DK, 3 for 48. But they kept a lid on top for the most part. And I thought that was a really good sign. And a lot of it was because of those young rookies, Malik Mustafa and Renardo Green. But they also had an interception. Mustafa's was inside the red zone, down at the 5-yard line. Tyler Lockett is being covered by, guess who? Renardo Green. And Geno Smith gets pressure in his face and the ball airmails. But when you look at the back end, it was great coverage by Renardo Green. It was really good job by Malik Mustafa for being there in the right position, and he's able to capitalize on it with the interception. Then when you look at Renardo Green's interception, boy, was that fantastic. You go back and you watch it, especially from the end zone camera angle, and you see him. He's playing just behind DK Metcalf in his hip pocket, and he's got vision on Geno Smith as he's running down the field. And he sees Geno about to load up to throw this football, and he takes off on a straight line where he figures that DK Metcalf is supposed to be running his route. And he drives on it and gets an angle and goes right in front of DK. Now, DK Metcalf did drift, but that's a DK problem because that ball was supposed to be on a direct dig, which means it's supposed to go flat. And DK Metcalf did not stay flat, and Renardo Green ran that route better than DK Metcalf to the ball. Big turnover. And you could see just by watching it, because on the copy, you can actually see his eyes from the TV copy. He was fully focused on the quarterback. He knew what he was going to do. He knew he was going to intercept that football. What a big play. Now, the other rookie, Dominic Puni, was absolutely fantastic in this game. Once again, no sacks, only gave up 2 hurries, played really consistent. One of the best run blockers on the entire field in this football game. And that's a vast improvement from what we had seen early in the season. He continues to get better and better and better. And now he's grading out as one of PFF's top 8 offensive guards in the entire league. So, I mean, you're talking about a dude that's playing at a Pro Bowl caliber level already as a rookie. And the 49ers are loving the fact they have a stabilizing force on the right side of the offensive line. Trent on the left, and then Dominic Puni on the right. And it's been very successful so far and what they were able to do. And yeah, you got to give major props to the 49ers scouting department going out and getting a guy that has been playing offensive tackle and saying, hey, this guy could be a Pro Bowl caliber guard right off the bat. And how about that? Dominic Puni already playing at such a high level that sometimes we forget that he's a rookie. We talk about Renardo Green and Malik Mustafa and Isaac Guerendo, but the truth is we kind of ignore Dominic Puni as far as his rookie status, because he's not playing like a rookie. He's already been consistent, play in and play out. He's huge for this 49ers offensive line, and he played really, really good in this game. I thought he did a good job against a very good defensive line, and he's just going to have to continue on this path, and it doesn't get easier because here comes Chris Jones as part of that Kansas City defense, and this is the ultimate test. If Dominic Puni answers this test, this is the litmus test. If he answers this, not only is he a Pro Bowler, but he's an all-pro caliber offensive lineman in year 1. And what a get that would be for you to pick up a Pro Bowl interior offensive lineman in round 3. Fantastic job by the 49ers scouting. Now, that is a big ask against Chris Jones. And I'm sure they're going to give him help at times. Jake Brendel giving some help, but with some of the ways that the Kansas City Chiefs like to blitz, there's going to be a lot of opportunities where he's going to be one-on-one, and he's going to have to answer the call for the 49ers. And I know that's Kansas City talk. We'll be getting into plenty of that this week. Now, Isaac Guerendo, and I think that there's a lot of people that have been saying Isaac Guerendo, it was kind of just one big run. Why are we getting so excited about one big run? But I went back and watched it, and it was more than one big run. there was actually a few carries that were really nice for him. He made the proper reads. He got vertical when he was supposed to. He looked explosive. He looked physical, and he did what he's supposed to do. And I think that there were other times where he didn't get a lot of yardage, that maybe it wasn't quite his fault. There was one time that Leonard Williams absolutely threw Trent Williams on the ground and made the tackle of Isaac Guerendo in the backfield. No running back is getting away from that. I don't care if it's Christian McCaffrey, Jordan Mason, whoever it is. Leonard Williams dominated on that play, and that's going to happen. Leonard Williams is an absolute freak of nature. The dude's an absolute monster, and that's why when you look at 4 pressures for Aaron Banks given up, it's because of Leonard Williams. Leonard Williams is an absolute game wrecker, and there were drives and there were series that he was a game wrecker. And it didn't matter if it was Banks or Burford or Trent Williams. He was just a problem. And the 49ers saw him on Dominic Pooney some, and Pooney did a good job, but they gave help with Jake Brendel. So I thought that overall, Isaac Guerendo looked good. I've seen vast improvements in vision, decision-making, being decisive, pressing the outside on outside zone. We saw it perfectly on the long run. But there's a couple toss plays and some other things that he did well. There's also an outside zone where he bounces all the way because there's nothing. Gets to the sideline and gets extra yards using a stiff arm. It was a superb run. So I thought that Isaac Guerendo had his best game, and it has nothing to do with that run. I thought overall the vision, the effectiveness were so much better than I had seen in any other game so far. I think the big run just capped off what was his best game so far as being able to see with vision, run with physicality, and with decisiveness. So I liked what we got from Isaac Guerendo in that game. Now, the blocking on the toss plays, talk about him having success. The toss play was a real advantage for the 49ers. In fact, Jordan Mason's big time carry of 38 yards came on a toss play to the left side. And Trent Williams and the guys on the outside, George Kittle, Kyle Juszczyk, Jawan Jennings, Brandon Ayuk, these guys are blocking phenomenally on the outside. The 49ers were able to execute at a high level, and that was a real place to target the Seattle Seahawks in this football game. And the 49ers came out and executed. And when you can execute at the level at which they executed, you're going to get explosive plays from running backs like Jordan Mason. One arm tackle to break, no problem. A little bit of vision to go across the field and get extra yardage, no problem. So 49ers were having success with the toss play with Jordan Mason. They had success with the toss play with Isaac Guerendo. And so 49ers were blocking very good on the outside. And I thought it was a nice combination of 49ers offensive line and 49ers skilled players on the edge being able to produce a lot of yards for this 49ers football team. And they ran the ball like crazy in this matchup. They were even getting opportunities for Deebo Samuel in the run game as well. But Isaac Guerendo, I know he had the big one, the 76-yarder, but he did really good. But they had 228 yards on the ground, including Patrick Taylor chipping in. So 49ers, it was all hands on deck. They ran some unique looks that helped Deebo. And what's crazy is I did my film breakdown, the first half offense, and all the rest is going to be put up this week as well. I've been working on those. But go check it out on Patreon, because if people have been saying that Deebo's ineffective when it comes to running the football this season, not as dynamic, there are some great carries from Deebo in this football game. There is one that literally, if he could have gotten around the outside, there's one guy left to beat. They couldn't get him. Juszczyk had to come back for him. It's a touchdown. Kyle Shanahan schemed it up so much that if Deebo could have got past this one guy with his speed and Juice could have got to the safety instead of having to come back and block him, it's 6. That's how close they are to big, dynamic, explosive plays. But also, they gave to Deebo up the middle as well. He made good cuts, good reads, ran with physicality. I like the 49ers run game overall. I thought they schemed it up very good. And, when you're averaging 6.9 yards per carry as a team, you're doing a darn good job. And I thought they did a darn good job in this football game. Now, a little update on Jordan Mason is Jordan Mason did practice today. So that's good news. He's wearing a blue no-contact jersey, but he's dealing with the AC joint sprain. But it looks like it's trending in the right direction. So he is out there and he is practicing, which is huge news for the 49ers. That way they don't have to make a decision on another running back right now. The likelihood is Christian McCaffrey comes back after the bye week, so you need Jordan Mason until that. But Jordan Mason will be ready at some point, and hopefully he's ready for this week. That is going to be huge. But, that offensive line, they had to battle all day long against Seattle with Jaron Reed and Leonard Williams and really good guys in the middle, Boye Mafia on the outside. And I thought they handled themselves really well. Were there moments they lost? Absolutely. It was an absolute war. I think the Seattle Seahawks, when healthy, have the best defensive line in the entire NFC West. But in this case, they weren't fully healthy, but still had a lot of their dogs out there, a lot of their really good football players. And the 49ers offensive line went out there and battled. And between them blocking well and Brock Purdy being able to use his ability to escape the pocket, they had 0 sacks in this football game, which was huge. Did they give up pressures? Of course. You're not going to not get out of games without giving up pressures, but I thought they did a good job. But Leonard Williams is a menace. And so you've seen plays that he was a real problem for. One thing that I think the 49ers need to get a little bit better at when it comes to the offensive line is penalties. They've been getting too many penalties, and especially from Jake Brendel. As a coaching point, we cannot have Jake Brendel having these mistakes. Now, there were a couple of plays the 49ers missed on adjustments as well. So I detail this pretty heavily over on Patreon, but I'll try to give you the best explanation I can. Is there is a play where Dominic Puni is going to be pulling from the right to the left. And the play is going to be set up really nice for the 49ers. However, the defensive alignment for the defensive lineman is, I'm just going to say it like this because this is the best way for people to understand, is outside shade of Dominic Puni. So it's outside of his shoulder over here. So here's Jake Brendel. Here's Dominic Puni, and he's outside of Dominic Puni all the way over here. And they expect on the play for Jake Brendel to be able to reach block and get all the way out there and get him. I think there needs to be an adjustment when someone is in that technique and that far outside of Dominic Puni. I think they should have switched it. I don't know if they have this call. I don't know if they have this versatility, but it was something that we would have done as an offensive line when I played. It's something that when I coached, that's what the offensive line would have done, is they would have switched roles on that play. They would have had Dominic Puni, and I know I would have had him pick up that man, and I would have pulled Jake Brendel on the play because he had no one head up and no one to the inside of him. So it's a opportunity missed, and maybe they'll start making adjustments like that. But that play got blown up, and it would have been a huge run on the play, but the defender was able to get vertical past Jake Brendel. And on the TV copy, all we see is Jake Brendel didn't do a good job. And so Jake Brendel has, enough problems. He'll make some mistakes here and there, but that one's not on him. That is a real problem that nobody can make that block. Maybe one guy on the entire team. I don't think even Dominic Puni could reach that. It's probably Trent Williams, and that's it. And even then, that would have been a tall ask for Trent Williams. So I think things like that will definitely hamper you. But when it comes to penalties, Jake Brendel's been getting more penalties over the last couple of weeks, especially holding, because he's having to reach. And so there were really good blocks from Jake Brendel. Jake Brendel made a phenomenal block on the big run by Isaac Garendo. Phenomenal. Everyone executed on that. I mean, you talk about offensive line, Colt McKivitz, great block. Dominic Puni, great block. Jake Brendel, great block. It was like boom, boom, boom. Everybody was making their plays. So Brendel, let's get less handsy. Let's get ourselves in proper position. But also, let's make sure our guys, if I'm Chris Forrester, understand that that is not a block that we can make. That one I was talking about earlier. That's not a successful play for the Niners. You either have to check out of the play or you have to adjust the blocking. So that's just something that I noticed on film that I wanted to bring up about the offensive line. And, that was one of the reasons I brought up Jake Brendel's penalty, was the 49ers still suffered negative plays that really ruined drives. So we had early on in the second half, we had a play where Eric Sauber and George Kittle went basically both in motion to each other, and it negated a Deebo Samuel run of 7 yards. That's unfortunate. We had a couple of offsides penalties as well, where guys moved and jumped. And then, of course, the Jake Brendel holding call. And on the Jake Brendel holding drive, that ended the drive. He got a holding call. They got to try to get something on second. It ends up being Jawan Jennings dropping the football when Brock Purdy escapes the pocket, throws, hits the ground right after the league challenge. And then the next play, they throw the screen to Deebo, and Deebo gets 18 of the 20 yards back, but unable to get the first down. That's a drive killer. And those were opportunities for the 49ers offense to go answer the 14 unanswered points by the Seattle Seahawks, but they were unable to. I mean, this is a 6-point game, and these key problems for the 49ers were arising. So they need to clean it up. I know it's tough to play at Lumen's Field. I know it's tough to play in that environment, and so I usually ignore offsides penalties for the most part. That is really tough, but I don't ignore holding penalties and really bad holding penalties for you just being out of position. And I think that's what was happening in this game. It's not like it was a close call. Jake Brendel was literally grabbing people from behind because they were beating him across his face. You can't do that. So he's got to get a little bit better at that. But I did think the 49ers handled the tough environment really well. They have been able to roll into Seattle over the last few years and not get out of sorts and not have any problems when it comes to their silent counts and their calls and their checks and their cans. They've been able to go through the whole thing, still able to run the necessary motion that they need to run. So it has been a good job by the 49ers and Kyle Shanahan being able to manage it, but also Brock Purdy just handling communication well. I think they've done a good job. So I was very excited about that because that used to be a real problem for 49ers teams in the past. Now, Brock Purdy was in full command of this offense, absolutely getting the 49ers in the right play, getting them into he was canning plays, he was keeping it the same, he was making good decisions with the football. Didn't put turnover-worthy footballs in the air. It was either going to be a completion or it was an incompletion by his own choice. Throwing it out of bounds, throwing it down, throwing it away. He was making sure that it was his guys that were going to make the catch and no one else. But also, he was hitting with pinpoint accuracy. That football he threw to George Kittle was absolutely fantastic, traveling 33 yards in the air. And part of it's because he's thrown from the hash all the way to the sideline, right past the arm of the outstretched defender, and where only George Kittle can get it. Now, the second George Kittle touchdown throws it right down the middle of the defense where only George Kittle can get it while stepping up in the pocket and getting ready to get hit by Leonard Williams. It was just fantastic. Brock Purdy was on point, and he made key throws at key times. He made plays with his legs that extended drives, including the first drive of the game. It's just Brock being Brock, and his numbers weren't over the top. They weren't the best numbers we've ever seen from him, but his touchdown numbers were 255 yards, 3 touchdowns in this game, including 2 to George Kittle. He was handling business, and that's exactly what you needed to get from your quarterback, and Brock Purdy absolutely delivered. 18 of 28 is not going to be anything that's going to jump off the screen and impress everybody, but he was executing at a high level in this football game, and it was nice to see. And, he could be getting a weapon back pretty soon. The 49ers officially today opened the practice window for Ricky Pearsall. He practiced, so Pearsall's back out there. Now, it doesn't mean he's going to be activated for Kansas City or Dallas for that matter. They could wait to activate him and bring him back coming out of the bye against Tampa Bay. But the 49ers are about to add a significant weapon to the wide receiver room. Ayuk, Debo, Jawan, Chris Conley, Ricky Pearsall, Jacob Cowing. It looks like the 49ers are getting healthy at the right time, and Pearsall is now a first-round draft pick that can help this football team. That's his talent level. We've talked about the other draft picks the 49ers have had, and they've all been doing well. I mean, even look at Tatum Bethune, who got a fumble recovery in this matchup last week on special teams. Everyone's contributing, and now the 49ers can add what should be one of their best draft picks. Dominic Puni might go down as the best draft pick, unless Ricky Pearsall lives up to expectation. But good news for the 49ers, getting him back in there. Now, before we talk about defense, I do want to talk about a couple of the injuries over on defense with Malik Mustafa. Mustafa was practicing on a side field today, so he's dealing with a low ankle sprain. I'm hoping he'll be back to practice by Wednesday, so that way he can be on the right track to be able to play. Now, Jordan Elliott was also working on that side field, and the 49ers could definitely use him to get some more interior pressure from that defensive line. So those are a couple of guys that are working on a side field. As far as guys coming back to practice, Tarvarius Ward, he missed last week because the knee injury was a game-time decision. He was back at practice. And Demetrius Flanagan-Fowles, who's been out for a couple of weeks with a calf injury, he was back at practice as well. One more notable thing, and we're going to talk about special teams later, is Jake Moody is progressing because he's out of his walking boot and now observing practice from the side. So he's at least moving in the right direction and can now put normal weight on his ankle, which is good news. And for 49ers backup kicker Matthew Wright, he did not practice. So we'll see what happens with Matthew Wright. We'll talk about him in a second as far as what he means for the San Francisco 49ers special teams. Now, Coach Nick Sorensen, I thought he called a very good football game. I know a lot of people have been critical of the 49ers defense and been critical of the 49ers special teams, and for good reason. I think through the first 3 weeks, everyone should have been able to be very critical of them. But I thought this 49ers defense didn't get beat because of bad play calls. I thought they did a good job of making sure they were in the right alignments and they had the right assignments in this game. They held the Seattle Seahawks to 52 yards on the ground. They made them one-dimensional. They made Geno Smith throw the ball 50 times. They forced 2 turnovers, and really they forced 3 turnovers. It just wasn't recovered by the 49ers, but Fred Warner punched out a football in the 4th that went backwards, and it literally almost worked out for the Niners where they got a huge stop and a turnover on downs. Seattle able to convert on a 4th, but Sorensen's defense gave up 17 points, and it was 3 at halftime. And the last touchdown, they're trying to get off the field, yes, but the main thing they're trying to do is not allow any big explosive play down the field. They didn't allow that. In fact, they forced 2 fourth downs on what should have been a prevent style defense. Catch the ball underneath, use the clock. So here's where I give success to the defense. Did they force Seattle to use as much clock as possible getting down the field? Yes. Do they have opportunity to get off the field? Yes. But also, they made them go under the 2-minute warning, so that was huge. So 17 points, if you told me the defense is going to give up 17 points a game, I think the 49ers are going to pretty much go undefeated. I would expect our offense to be able to score more than 17 points for the most part. So that was a great performance by that 49ers defense. I thought it was a tremendous first half. They did not even allow Seattle in the end zone. Great goal line stand at the end of the half. Pressure on pressure on pressure. They figured out how to get Nick Bosa some extra opportunities without getting chipped as much. So overall, I think they're doing a good job on defense. And imagine this. We're talking about Nick Sorensen with the things that they did, causing all those turnovers, forcing a lot of big-time stops. And we're talking about him not doing a good job. And it's like, wait a second, this dude did phenomenal. And he did phenomenal as calling defense without 2 all-pro players. Talanoa Hufanga, he's on the IR. Tarvarius Ward, he was out of the game. And yet they still played so good on defense. How many teams in this league will lose 2 all-pros and their defense and still play the way that the 49ers did? I think Sorensen's doing a good job. Now, he's got to continue it. And he's got a tough matchup coming up against Kansas City. But he's moving in the right direction. He's putting his players in the right situation to be successful. And you know how we know? Because there's players popping up making plays that haven't been making plays all the time. Look, Renardo Green has interception. Malik Mustafa has interception. Robert Beal plays his best game of the season. You just see guys stepping up and making plays, and it's good. The pass rush was really good, disruptive all day. They caused Geno to throw early. His internal clock was sped up, and he had misses. And it started on the opening drive with the interception to Malik Mustafa. Later on in the first quarter, he missed Jackson Smith and Jigba, what would have been a first down throw because he's getting pressure, doesn't get his feet underneath him, throws an errant pass. It was consistent pressure from the 49ers defensive front. I know it did not account for many sacks. Sam Okawanu's the only one that got a sack, but Bosa nearly got the ball out of Geno Smith's hands on one play, forced Geno to throw the ball away. Ball was thrown away from Leonard Floyd chasing him as well. But 14 pressures from Nick Bosa, 6 pressures from Leonard Floyd. It was a good job by the 49ers. I mean, they were putting pressure on Geno Smith. You'd love for those to turn into sacks, but being disruptive and causing turnovers is just as effective. And that's the thing. The 49ers had a good relationship between pressure up front and then making plays on the back end. And I thought that was really good for the 49ers. Debo and Jair Brown were huge when it came to run defense. There's a couple of plays where Demo steps up, fills his gap, and makes a tackle of Kenneth Walker in the backfield. Now, there's a couple of bad ones, too, where Walker jukes him because there's too much space. But Demo, playing nickel at a high level, helping with tackling, did a really good job. and I was impressed by him. And Jair Brown was coming up and making key run stops, coming up and setting the edge when that was his job. I thought he did a good job tackling and a good job helping in the run game. And both those guys were huge in helping the 49ers keep the Seattle Seahawks one-dimensional and not allowing Kenneth Walker to get going. You didn't really see any of those runs he's had against the 49ers where he runs right and he breaks a couple tackles and he runs all the way left for another 20 yards. Nothing like that happened. They did a really good job of being sure tacklers and making sure they got Kenneth Walker down. But it starts with secondary players when they're asked to be there in run fits in nickel situations to step up and be there. And both of them did a really good job in this game. And Malik Mustafa did as well. He made a couple tackles in the backfield because he was coming up and making some plays on the edge. And D. Winters, even though it wasn't like his best game, I believe he has earned the right to stay as a starting linebacker over a DFF. So DFF's returning. I hope the 49ers stay with that base 4-3 of Campbell, Warner, and D. Winters. I would like to see more Winters in nickel situations if they feel comfortable with him in zone. But we'll see. I think that's something the 49ers could definitely adjust to. We know that once Dre Greenlaw gets back, Devondre Campbell will go to the Sam linebacker role, and Dre will go back to his Will linebacker role. But I didn't think it was horrible from Devondre Campbell. I just think if you could have a more athletic, more talented guy that's a little bit better in coverage, that would work out for the 49ers. And I definitely think he's better against the run than DFF. Run blitzes and zone blitzes kept things interesting. They continued to bring run blitzes, and that has been successful over the last 3 weeks. A Nick Sorensen adjustment after they were struggling to stop the run. Another great performance. It doesn't always work out, but making them account for extra guys in the run game has worked for the 49ers. And then zone blitzes. We saw different defensive tackles out in space, whether that was Kalia Davis or that was Kevin Givens. We also saw them drop off defensive end Robert Beal Jr., who played 3-4 outside linebacker at Georgia. He was out there as far as coverage as well. So they were giving some of those looks, dropping some guys off, bringing Campbell and Warner and blitzes, and it was very effective taking Geno Smith off read one. And really, there weren't too many opportunities where Geno was able to get read one and just get the ball out of his hands. Usually, read two, read three was where he had to go. So the 49ers did a really good job of syncing their game plan of bringing pressure and making Geno hold on to the football a little bit by taking away reads 1 and 2 as he was going through his progressions. I thought they did a really good job. Now, I think they still have concerns with the safeties when it comes to coverage. George Odom allowed DK Metcalf to get behind him twice, and one of those he's able to make up enough ground on an underthrown football by Geno Smith and knock the ball away. The other one would have been a big-time touchdown over the top, and no reason for it. It's the right coverage. He should be over the top on DK Metcalf, and unfortunately, Metcalf gets behind. Now, it got negated because of penalty, but George Odom allowed 2 big vertical plays downfield, and everyone, I think, remembers that in Minnesota game, the same sort of thing happened when George Odom's out there. So teams, when Odom is on the field, are willing to press this team vertically down the field. That's something the 49ers definitely have to be concerned with, because guess what? Here comes Patrick Mahomes, and here comes a team that's got Xavier Worthy, and they will be more than happy to test the 49ers safeties up the seam of the field. And so the 49ers are going to have to make sure they're a little bit better at that. And Odom got beat, and it could have been really bad. Luckily for the 49ers, it worked out. Now let's go to the special teams. I think the punt team was great. Mitch Wisnowski punted really well. He got enough height on the football to allow the 49ers gunners to get there. He pinned them back a couple times. But I thought Chris Conley and Ronnie Bell did a really good job as gunners. Conley, of course, nearly had a help for the 49ers as far as the turnover, but he forced some fair catches. But he also downed the ball inside the 5. Ronnie Bell downed the ball at the 5. I thought overall the punt team was fantastic in this football game, and that's good news, right? You got to have some things that are going well. It was. Field goal team and field goal situations were perfect, and they were able to get the field goals right through. And so that's one area that you like having a solid kicker is Matthew Wright did a good job of making sure he had the kicks up and through. The problem was when it came to the kickoff team. The kickoff team is the problem. And it started, I think, with Matthew Wright not being able to get the ball through the end zone. He got it to the end zone a few times, But one of those times, Laviska Shenault returned it, and it caused a fumble. Boom, bravo to the Niners special teams. 2 turnovers in 2 weeks. Great. The problem was the next time they tried it, Laviska Shenault took it to the house. And Seattle had done nothing on offense. At the time, the 49ers were leading the game 23-3, utter domination. Defense had not given up a touchdown, just a field goal at the end of the half. And then all of a sudden, the big special teams play and flip momentum, and I think it did in this game. But it wasn't because of scheme. So normally there's been a Brian Schneider problem, but in this one, Jalen Mahoney is an undrafted free agent who they had to bring up from the practice squad. So take it for what you will. But Mahoney was also one of the best tacklers during the preseason. He graded out better than Malik Mustafa, better than Jair Brown. So he's done a very good job as a tackler, and he has the open field. And he's able to if he's able to make an open field tackle, no big deal. Now, his problem was he didn't squeeze this a little bit further. He should have got a little bit more up the field and then broke down. He broke down a little bit too early, and it left Laviska Shenault some space to be able to run past him. That's a Jalen Mahoney problem. Now, if you want to say that Brian Schneider didn't coach it right, you could be right, other than the fact that I've seen other guys do it really well. So it's one of those two things. But also, Jalen Graham had the potential to make a tackle on this, and he didn't. He threw a shoulder, didn't quite get his arms on him. So maybe they teach shoulder tackles up there at Washington, and he's got to get back to form. I don't know. But the 49ers definitely had a mistake when it came to that. They want to be able to kick this ball out of the end zone. I guarantee that. So Mitch Wisnowski might have to handle kickoff duties for a while if Matthew Wright can't kick the ball through the end zone. This is where you're missing Jake Moody, especially, is when it comes to kickoffs. And it was a huge part of this football game, because I don't think that they would have gotten any momentum without that. So I do like Matthew Wright kicking field goals right now in the interim. I think he does a good job. He was very accurate, very poised. But when it comes to kickoff duties, I'm concerned. So we'll see. And if Wisnowski's not able to do it, can the 49ers find a way to get some balls that hit in the landing zone but bounce? Maybe get some line drive type things going on away from the returners, make them feel unsecure about bringing the ball out. Maybe they could go to something like that, because if they kick it off like they just did, we're going to have potential of some big-time plays for the Kansas City Chiefs, who have McCole Hardman and Xavier Worthy, and a lot of speed that they can use to get some good returns, and a very good special teams coach. So they've got to do a little bit better. So the truth is, there are some areas of the special teams that are really good, especially punt coverage. Fantastic. Wisnowski, fantastic. Matthew Wright handling field goal duties, did a great job. But the kickoff, because of the ineffectiveness of the kicker to get the ball through the end zone, was a real problem for the San Francisco 49ers in this matchup. But overall, it was good. The 49ers have at least got a big division win, and now they're number 1 in the division. I thank you guys all for joining me. Please like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Appreciate it. Listening on audio platform, 49ers Cutback on Belief. Please give it a 5-star rating. And if you like Patreon, you like film breakdowns, go check that out. That's available to you. Standalone shows as well. But the breakdowns, there's going to be all the breakdowns of the Seattle Seahawks game this week. One's up right now. The offensive first half have been working on the rest. Those will be coming up this week. So go check those out. And of course, this episode was brought to you by Bet Online. The game starts here. I'll catch you guys on the next one. Until then, stay safe. Remember, the right way is always the 49ers way.